Here we're asked to go ahead and find our limits. Well, hopefully this doesn't push you over the edge and force you to reach your limits of your ability. Now, for the most part when you're looking at limits, you just try to take this number, what x is getting close to, and you plug it in. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, you have more work to do. So you take 3, plug it in, take 3, plug it in, and see if it simplifies. And in this case, we get 19 over 5. That's great. It worked. So we're going to try that over here. We're going to take our 2 and plug it in. Take our 2 and plug it in down here in the bottom. And in this case, we get 8 minus 8, which is 0, over 4 minus 4, which is 0. 0 over 0 is referred to as an indeterminate form, which means you cannot determine the answer till you do more work. Well, you'll notice the top is differences of cubes. So if we factor it according to differences of cubes, we get this. The bottom is differences of squares. Well, in that case, you realize, oh, I have a common factor top and bottom. And that drops out. So you look at what's left. You have your limit of x approaches 2, just of this stuff here. Well, then go ahead and try to just plug it in. Plug in your 2 here, and on the bottom. Well, in that case, you end up getting 12 over 4, which is 3. So we plugged it in. We got 0 over 0, which was an indeterminate form, so we could not determine our answer until we did more work, and that work is down below here. Well, there's a couple ways we can do this problem. This is our instantaneous rate of change formula, our IROC formula. So all we're going to do is we're going to put it over h. Now we got to take this x plus, or 2 plus h, and we got to plug it in here where we see an x. So it's going to be 3 times our 2 plus h with a minus 4. Then it says we've got to subtract. And then it says we've got to subtract what we get when we plug in 2. We plug 2 right here. So this does simplify. We can get rid of the parentheses on the top, distribute through our 3. Distribute through the negative here. You'll notice on top the 6's drop, the 4's drop. So all we're left with is a 3h. Over h, well, h over h, that drops. So now we have the limit as h approaches 0 of 3. Well, as h gets really, really close to 0, it has no effect on our 3 because there's no h around. So we just get 3. Now, this is your instantaneous rate of change formula, which is the slope of your tangent line. We really didn't have to go ahead and go through all this because it's asking, what's the slope of this line? Well, it's a line. Our slope is 3. So whenever you have your limit as h approaches 3 or 0 of something like this, it's just asking you to find the slope of that line when x is 2. And here our slope of our line anywhere, not just at 2, anywhere is 3. Similarly over here, this is our instantaneous rate of change formula, our IROC formula, which tells us our slope of our tangent line when x is 3. The only thing is we can't take the shortcut I was just talking about over here because this was a line. We could just say our slope was 3. This is not a line. So we got to go through all the similar work we did over here. So we're going to have to take our 3 plus h and plug it in for our x. So it's 6 over our 3 plus h minus what we get when we plug in 3. So it'd be 6 over 3. Well, to work this out, we have a fraction minus a fraction. To do that, we have to have a common denominator. Common denominator between our 3 and our 3 plus h is a 3 times 3 plus h. So this first fraction to get that common denominator needs a 3 in the bottom. Well, if we multiply the bottom by 3, you got to multiply the top by 3 because you can only multiply by special forms of 1. Our second fraction has a 3 on the bottom. we need to get our common denominator of a 3 times a 3 plus h. So we're going to multiply this fraction on the bottom by 3 plus h. Well, if we multiply the bottom by 3 plus h, you've got to multiply the top by 3 plus h. So we end up with a 3 times 16, or 3 times 8, or if I could talk here, 3 times 6, which is 18, minus, distribute through this negative 6 onto the rest of that fraction, and we get this, over our common denominator of a 3 times 3 plus h. Now we were dividing by an h, which is really h over 1, but instead of dividing by a fraction of h over 1, we multiply by the reciprocal. Now as you look at this fraction here, the 18s drop. Now you notice you have just an h times a negative 6 on top. Here you have an h times the whole bottom, h times the whole bottom, h times the whole top. The h's drop. Now we can actually go ahead and try plugging in 0. If we plug in 0 here for h, we'd have a 3 times a 3, which is 9. Negative 6 over 9 is negative 2/3. And you might have been wondering, why didn't we just plug in 0 for h right away? Well, if we did that, we would get a 6 over 3 minus a 6 over 3, which is 0, over a 0 on the bottom. And remember, 0 over 0 is an indeterminate form. So you can't determine your answer till you do more work. Our issue here was we, for quite a while here, always had an h in the bottom. And if you put in 0 for what's on the bottom, you'd be dividing by 0. And you know we can't divide by 0. So we had to keep trying to get rid of this h on the bottom here until we could actually get rid of it and plug in 0 then for what's left.